Yo, it's Klaas here. So I recently got a request from a friend of mine to do a tutorial on the rigs that I use for my characters, and I thought it would be fun to do like a little bit more longer tutorial in which I actually explain the whole process that I go through. So basic modeling, creating a character, and then rigging it and rendering and doing a little bit of animation. So that's what we're gonna cover in the upcoming 2 hours. So I'm gonna go through the whole process step by step, but it's gonna be a little bit faster. So I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail on everything. I'm just gonna show quickly everything that I do, and then if you want to get a better understanding of specific part, I can make a more detailed tutorial about that as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing that I did, you can see this is an empty scene, is I created a sphere and we made it a little bit bigger, move it a little bit up, and then we like to have equal values, so let's make it 5. And let's put it up at 15 height, and I created another cylinder, and it doesn't have to have that much division, so we just put the axis and the height on 6 and the height at 10. And we're going to create an arm from this, so we're going to rotate it 90 degrees and move it up and move it sideways, and let's go to the let's move this a little bit more round. So with B selected, you can make a drop off, but I only wanted to move that 1 point. So now I'm just shaping the entire arm, and I'm going to go to front view and hit 3 just to make it smooth. Push this a little bit in, and there you can see I used the B to basically have a drop off, or at least use the soft selection. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to duplicate the arm in the opposite direction. So I'm just I have an exact copy, and I did that by moving the pivot point to the exact center. So that way I can easily duplicate it. What I'm doing now is I'm making the legs from the same geometry as the arms, and this is going to be a really simple character, so no hands, just arms and legs. And let's see, I translated it exactly 1.5 from the center, and now with the snapping tool I'm making the foot at the bottom flat again. And now I'm just going to use the extrude tool and select some faces to create the foot. And this is all, really simple, but just switching to vertex mode, changing it a bit. And now I select all the bottom faces and hit extrude to get a nice flat heel. Okay, that's our first leg. And now let's look at the front, and we're going to duplicate it, and now it has to be exactly at minus 1.5. And let's see, I think the next step will be to create the eyes. So rotate, create another sphere and rotate it again to 90 degrees. Make it a bit bigger and move it into the body. Let's see, move it a bit to the right. And there's the second eye. And we always like to have round values, so 16 minus 2, oh sorry, that was the wrong, 3.7, and that one is going to be 2, and that one's going to be minus 2. So I like the eyes to be a little bit different in size, the way it's kind of like the character becomes a little bit more stupid. And here's the mouth, so I just made a torus shape, and I'm gonna move it to where the mouth should be. It's going to be a bit thicker, so the section radius is going to be 0.7, and then we're gonna, I think I'm just gonna adjust, no, I'm gonna give some shaders now, so just gonna have some normal Maya shaders, and in the attribute editor we can adjust the colors. And let's say we also want to have the legs to have some color, just a normal Lambert, a little bit darker gray, selecting the eyes, and just I'm gonna add a ramp texture to the color. So what you can see is I hit 6 and then we can see the texture. So I'm just gonna make the pupils black. I'm gonna remove the red because we only need 2 colors. There you go. So now what happens is that you see a little bit of white in the black, so I give the rear texture as well a little bit black. And let's make the lips a little bit reddish, a little bit pink. I don't know how many, what am I tweaking? Green lips, yellow lips. Okay, let's have yellow lips. I think I'm gonna change it later. Okay, so now I want to have the body a little bit bigger, so I'm just selecting everything that's on the body and grouping it by Command G, and I scale it up a little bit. Yeah, that looks better in terms of size. And let's hit 1 on all these geometries. And the next step that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create the eyelids. So I just duplicated the eye and scaled it a little bit bigger. And then we go to face mode. And we're going to go into front view. And we're going to delete all the lower faces and then just select delete. And then now I want to have the same color, of course, on the lid as the body. And we're gonna fill the gap, the hole. So just click fill hole. And now you get this like a little bit ugly edge. So I'm going to rotate it around to minus 90 degrees. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select just the face that we created, and I'm going to extrude a little bit and move it inwards. That way we're going to get a nice edge. And now we have, of course, also the lower eyelid. So that's going to be minus, I think minus 90. Oh, no, 90. We're going to do this later. And now you see there's still a little bit of yeah, how do you call that? A little bit of room between the eyelids. So I'm just going to select the face of the lower eyelid and move it up a bit. So that way we have a nice closed eye. So I'm going to duplicate these eyelids. It's hard to select them. To the other eye. Actually, I'm going to duplicate the entire eye. So I've selected the eye and both the eyelids, and now I've moved it to where the other big eye was. So that's -4. And then I'm going to scale it up a bit. And now I just deleted the original eye next to it. So now we have yeah, let's make these legs a little bit smaller. No, not like that. Just a little bit thinner. And the arms as well. The mouth. I want to change the color. So let's make it a bit darker and a little bit more red. Yeah, that's better. Okay, just selecting the lower eyelids. Now you can see it's already becoming a funny little character. Now the next step, the model is kind of finished already. Because I like to have it as simple as it, so I'm just going to save it as yeah, and these are not the right files, so let me go up, and we're going to create a special folder for this project. We're going to call it Orange Dude, and in that folder I'm going to just save this as Orange Dude _ model 01. Okay, so the model is finished, and now the next step is to name all the different parts of the model. So this is the right leg, or the left leg, no, the right leg. R underscore leg, L underscore leg. Yeah, I don't really know why I have to have capitals, but I just do it that way. The arms and the left arm and the mouth, the body, the upper eyelid from the left eye. Oh no, it's the right eye. No, it's the left eye. Yeah, oh, okay, just made a mistake there. But I'm not gonna change it because this is not live, so maybe later I'll see it. That's the right eye ball, and we'll do the same for this. Let's make it the left upper eyelid. So these are not correct, but anyway, it doesn't really matter, as long as we have a difference. Yeah, I always use, okay, so let's name the groups left eye and the other group. So in this group there you have the model of the eyeball and both the eyelids. So now everything is named. Now I move everything in one group, and let's call it, I'm going to call it orange dude mod underscore mod. Yes. Okay, now the only thing that we still need to do is everything has translation, so just freeze transform all the objects and move it so that it's exactly on the top of the grid. Now we have to freeze transform it again, so let's just check all the geometry is freeze transformed, and then on the in the channel box you can see that there's still some history, which I just deleted. So all the geometry has been freeze transformed, and there's no history on the model anymore. So this model is basically good to go for rigging. And then I get the micro break, but I'm not going to have a break, so just delete it. So let's see. Oh yeah, I'm just going to add some shading to these so that he has some boots. Just a normal Lambert. And actually it's nice if they are white, so he has them nice white boots. And I like the arms a little bit more darker. Yes, okay, perfect. Okay, one more save, and now we're gonna save it as, because we're gonna go into rigging mode now, so I'm just gonna call it rig. So whenever we want, we still have the model, and the eyes are going to go into a layer so that I can hide them. So that's just a display layer. I'm just adding the mouth there as well. Oh, no, it can have its own group. Mouth. Oh, so the layer is already, the name is already there, so I just have to call it mouth layer. So there we go. We have the body, and let's just hit 1 to make everything low poly, and then we're gonna add some. I'm gonna go into animation menu and go to skeleton and create a bone. This is gonna be the main bone, so that's the hip bone, and I create that with holding X, and then I hold X as well, so that when I create the bone, it snaps onto the grid. We're gonna go to front view, and then we're gonna click the hip, and we're gonna attach the first joint of the right leg to the hip. Then we're gonna go to the side view. We're gonna create the upper leg, the lower leg, the heel, the ankle, and the toe. And I'm just gonna position these a little bit better. And now what we're going to test is if the rotation of the joints is correct. And as you can see, the orientation of the joints is not correct. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go to the orientation of the joint, and then I'm gonna select orient joint to world, and that way all the joints get oriented in the right way. Yeah, I don't know why it is, but that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Just going to reposition these a little bit, and as you can see, I also have already a slight bend in the upper leg and the lower leg, and that way when you create a IK handle, it already bends in the right direction. Now, why don't I just connect the hips directly to the upper bone and have a small bone in between? It's basically because that way the upper part of the leg doesn't move as much with the upper leg as you want. So there's like a joint in between, and right now I'm just giving names to all of the bones with an L underscore before it. And the nice part about Maya is that when you have one joint hierarchy selected and you just say mirror joints, and then you can say search and replace, then all the bones have the proper name, but then for the right side. So I'm going to select the hierarchy of the upper bone, and then I'm just going to select the geometry. I'm going to do the same thing. And by selecting just only the joints and only the geometry that you want, you can tell Maya only to manipulate one specific geometry with one specific set of bones. So I think it's still not correct, apparently. So these are all working fine, but then when I select multiple at the same time, I still get the wrong rotation. So I'm just gonna select this and say joint orient, and then apply, and then of course it changes the bone around, so I have to do it before I bind the geometry. So I just deskinned the geometry and I selected the joints and just hit orient joint to world, and now selecting the hierarchy of the joints again, selecting the geometry and smooth binding it, and let's see if we rotate it now. Now it's perfect. So that's okay. Let's do the same thing for the other. Yes, this is also rotating perfectly. So I'm just gonna select the upper leg and select the hierarchy, and then just select the geometry and smooth bind. So that way the joints get connected to the geometry of the legs. And the only thing now what I don't like is that the upper this is not working correctly. So that small joint that I'm selecting right now should actually make sure that the upper part of the geometry shouldn't move. So let's detach the skin, and then we're gonna have to reassign the entire joint hierarchy again to the skin, but now also selecting that small joint on the top. And as you can see, now also the geometry is moving correctly. So let's do it as well for the other side. Let's select all the hierarchy of the joints, select the geometry, smooth bind, and that way we have everything A-OK. So let's see. What's next? I think that we're going to select the body and the arms, and also I'm just selecting all the geometry and putting it into a display layer, calling it body layer, and hiding it. And now we're basically going to work on the rig. or we were already working on the rig, but since we now have all the body connected to the bone structure, let's go ahead and work on the eyes. So I'm just going to hide the eyelids. And what the next step I'm going to do is I want to have to know exactly the middle point of the sphere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the spheres, and I'm going to display the transform display the scale pivot. What allows this is that it's going to show that green point there in the middle. I'm just going to hide it so that you can see the difference. And I'm going to show it again. And basically what it allows me to do is snap the controllers that are going to manipulate the eyes, or the joints that are going to be manipulating the eyes exactly at the center of the eye. So I'm going to just select it, created the joint. And what we're going to do is we're going to have two joints exactly on the same place. And we're going to bind the eye onto the second joint. So we're going to have the left eye joint, and we're going to have the left eye joint, the inner joint. And we're going to duplicate these to the eye on the right. Am I going to do that? Probably going to have, oh yeah, there we go. So let's duplicate them with Control D. No, we're not going to do that. Yes. So I just duplicated them, and with Shift selected, I snapped them to the other scale anchor point, just renaming them RR, RI, and RI inner. So perfect. So I'm going to select the inner right eye and the geometry and bind them. And I'm going to do the same for the left eye. And that way, now when I select both the joints, we can see that they're manipulating or influencing the geometry of the eyes. Perfect. And now I'm going to make one joint that's going to connect the eye joints to the body. And let's go to the side view, so we have it so that it's exactly. So I'm going to parent the two joints underneath the eye joint, the eyes joint, and then I'm going to connect the eye joint to the neck joint. And as you can see, Maya automatically connects or creates a joint in between. So this way now when I move the body, the eyes move along as well. Now these are only this was only for the pupils basically, so the eyeballs, but the eyelids, they still stay at the same place. So now we need to create a controller. We're not going to bind the eyelids to any joints. We're just going to create controllers that, oh, actually now I see that the arms are not in the right position. So let's just unbind them, and I freeze transform them and move them a little bit to the left. And let's just select the joints, select the hierarchy of the joints, and then just select the geometry and smooth bind. And let's smooth it all out. So what I'm going to do next, oh yeah, I'm going to create a controller now, and it's going to be a cube controller. And I first created a polycube, and then I'm going to snap with a EP curve. I'm going to snap all the points so that I get a curve which looks like a cube. And then I'm going to delete the polycube, and then I have basically a curve cube left. And I'm going to, Jesus Christ, I'm going to center pivot let's go to the side view. I'm have it snapped to the ankle, and now I'm gonna reshape the geometry of the controller so that it's kind of like shaped nicely around the leg or the foot, and make it a bit bigger on the right side, on the left side. So the basic principle of rigging is that first you connect your geometry to a deformer. That could be either a let's say a joint or a lattice or a cluster, and then you basically make it so that when you want to start animating, or you never actually animate the joints, you always make the joints move by creating controllers. So, and the controllers are always made out of curves or maybe a locator, but usually it's curves. So I just created two foot controllers, and and they're both positioned so that they have okay, so I created a cylinder or circle curve, and I just put it to linear, and that makes it a bit chunkier. And this is going to be the hip controller. I just duplicated it and scaled it up a bit. So now we have two controllers, which is going to be the body. This is going to be the chest probably, and the head. Oh, and I have to, so I'm holding V so that the circle snaps to the joints, and all of these circles are going to be controllers. So I'm scaling them a little bit up, and I'm going to freeze transform these so that they have no translation on them. And I'm going to use this one and duplicate it to start working on the arms. And we're going to translate it or rotate it to -90 and scale it down a bit. And we're going to use this one, duplicate it, and move it to the joints so that each joint basically has its own controller. And it doesn't really matter that they all have values yet. I'm gonna scale them down a bit, and then we're gonna do the same for the other arm. Select the big controller and put it at the same place, and just gonna hide the geometry. So we're gonna reuse the other controller and add them onto the so I deleted one without knowing it, so that's all great. And what is our next step? Oh yeah, we're gonna give some color to these curves, and I have a little script for that, because if you want to do it one by one, it's a lot of work. So let me see, where I have the script. I think it's in either Easy Tools. No. I think it's in, I know where it is. Let me just save. Custom, yes, there it is, CC. So this allows you to select all the curves and just, okay, this should work. Select all of them, and just click one color, and that way they all turn to red, which is great. So we want to give a little bit of a distinction between left and right. So we just, all the curves on the left will be red, and all the curves on the right will be blue. And then of course we can add some fancy colors to the body. Great. Okay. The next step we're gonna have is we're gonna create another circle, which is gonna be the main circle. And in the channel box, I'm gonna set the degree to linear, and I'm gonna give it 16 sections, and we're gonna make a nice star out of this. So I'm just gonna select every next vertex and then scale it in. Wow, amazing. So we have a nice main controller which manipulates the entire rig, and of course it's gonna be purple. So I'm gonna freeze that one, and I'm gonna select all the controllers now and do a freeze transform on all the translation, rotation, and scale. Also going to delete all the history just to make sure that everything is clean. So now all the controllers are zeroed out, which is great. And let's name them. So this is going to be the left shoulder. Actually, it's going to be, this is going to be the left, yeah, that's going to be the left shoulder. This is going to be the left elbow. And this is going to be the left lower arm. And this is going to be the left palm. Now we're going to do the same for the other side. It's going to be the left shoulder again. Yeah, that's correct. It should be the right shoulder. So right upper arm, right elbow, right arm, lower arm. It doesn't really matter, but it's just because his arms are just tubes. So okay, and then right palm, and that's going to be the hips with capital H, and it's going to be the belly, the chest, and the head. Okay, great. And we're going to have the left foot controller and the right foot controller. Great, everything nice and clean. So let's show everything again. And then we're gonna, what are we gonna do with this one? I don't know. Oh yeah, the next step is we're gonna make a controller specifically for the eyelids. So I'm going to just make this kind of moon shape controller by reshaping a circular curve. And we're gonna use this controller to manipulate the eyelids. So let's scale it up a bit, and we're gonna move it upwards. Just gonna hide the rig and the body. And now we want to have this controller also snapped exactly again to the center of the eyeball, and rotate it to so that it's kind of like in line with the eyelid that it's going to control. And I'm going to do one more for the bottom eyelid. Make sure also that this one is in line with the lower eyelid. Great. Now we're just going to give them, we're just going to freeze transform them. Or no, we're going to duplicate them to the other eyelid, to the other eye, and scale them up a bit because that eye is bigger. And select them. And we're gonna, where is that? Oh, yeah. Custom color, I'm gonna make them red, and these are gonna be blue, just for clarity. And let's just freeze transform everything to be SOAR, and delete the history on everything. And gotta be clean enough when rigging. Renaming the controllers to left upper lid and left lower lid, and right upper lid and left or right lower lid. Okay, great. And now I'm going to combine them or group them and center pivot the group to exactly the place. So now I'm gonna, yeah, so when grouping them, they actually were already exactly centered to that to the scale point of the eyeball. So everything is rotating exactly around the center of the eyeball. So that way, when I rotate the eye, the lids with using the controller, they will actually move exactly around
the eyeball. And we're just renaming the groups of the eyelid controllers to right lids and left lids. And what are we going to do next? Oh yeah, we're going to add hierarchy to the controllers that control the arms. And I made a little mistake here because we actually need to, so the palm, the left palm goes into the left lower arm, and then the left lower arm goes into the elbow, and then we have, let's do it on the other side, so the right palm goes into the right lower arm, right elbow, right shoulder, and into the right upper arm. So I did that wrong because I put the shoulder in the upper arm, should be the other way around. So let's go elbow into, let's put the elbow into the upper arm and the shoulder, upper shoulder in the upper arm and the shoulder, and then put them out of each other. So let's put them both in the main. Okay, so what I just did is I just gave some hierarchy to the specific controllers by putting them, by basically parenting them or putting them in a hierarchy. So these are going to be in the main. Actually, they are going to be underneath the head controller at some point. What I'm doing now is I'm parenting the geometry of the eyelid to the controller, that to the corresponding controller. So I'm just constraining the geometry to the controllers so that we can use the controllers to manipulate the geometry of the lids. And now I'm going to relocate the eye group to the controller of the group of the lids to the eye. Oh no, wait! I'm actually parenting the eye group controllers to the joints that also manipulate the eyes. But I did it wrong. Oh wait, no, I did it correctly. I just didn't parent the neck joint to the I didn't put any, so what I'm doing now is I'm parenting the controllers to the joints so that they actually move the geometry or the joints around. I forgot to do that. So if we are correct, now everything should move. Yes, perfect. So you can see I'm now not touching any of the joints anymore. I'm only using the curves to control the body. And let's save. And I think that we just skipped in time a little bit, so I collapsed all the geometry. And now what I did is I basically want to check if my rig is scalable or not. And as you can see, everything is scalable except for the eyelids, because the eyelids are the only thing that is not binded. So we have to also do a scale constraint of the eyelid controller onto the eyelid geometry. And now you can see that everything is scaling perfectly. So let's rename this orange dude underscore rig, and that's perfect because now we only have a group of geometry and we have a main curve, and that's nice and clean. Okay, so I just deleted all of these visibility groups. And the next thing that I want to start rigging is the mouth, I think. Yes. So the mouth has a little bit too much geometry than it needs when I created it. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to delete a few of these edges, these edge loops that it, just basically to create a little bit lower poly. So I'm going to select every second edge, and when we do that, we're gonna delete these edge loops. So with the right click mouse, edge loop, delete. So it's a little bit more low poly. And then now still it has a lot of, yeah, it's kind of like I just scaled it up a bit and freeze transformed it. So we're going to do the same thing for the edges that are going around. And let's select that one, and we're going to do edge loop, utilities, and edge loop delete. So now we have we could have done this easier way, but this way was the faster way I found. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to vertex mode, and we're going to select all the vertices that are in one edge loop, and then we're going to connect these with a cluster. And let's see, where is the cluster? There's a cluster. And we're going to do that for each edge loop. So we're going to work our way around. So when you see I connect the edge loop to a cluster, or all the vertices to a cluster, and then I can use the cluster to move around the geometry. So I'm not binding the geometry to a bone, but I'm just using clusters to manipulate the shape. And the clusters can rotate and translate, and the cool part about that is that you can really manipulate the shape really well of the geometry. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to recreate again the cube controller. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have basically these cube controllers are going to control the clusters. So I'm just going to delete the geometry cube, and we're going to have two types of cubes. We're going to have ghosts and we're going to have real ones, and basically that will allow us to make blend shapes with these controllers. So I have two cubes, and they're going to be in a hierarchy of each other. So we have now I don't know why I'm trying to freeze transform them. Okay, great. So we have curve, basically we have the real one, the real cube is going to be inside of the ghost cube. So hierarchy-wise, I just freeze transformed all of these, and now we're going to move them forward, and we're going to freeze transform them again. And as you can see, they are all snapped to the pivot of the cluster, so that they actually are exactly in front of that cluster. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the real cube, and I'm going to parent and control, basically parent it to the cluster, so that they manipulate the movement of the cluster. Oh, that's not correct, what I did there. So as you can see, the real cube is the small one, and the ghost cube is going to be the ghost, the bigger cubes are going to be the ghost cubes. I'm just going to give them a different color. And so the yellow ones, yeah, as you can see, the smaller ones are going to be also a different color. And I know that this is going to be going quite fast, this part, so I'm gonna make another tutorial in which I'm gonna be a little bit slower about this. But basically the green cubes are the real cubes, let's say, and the yellow ones are the ghost cubes. And what I'm doing right now is I'm creating a main controller that is going to manipulate or move around all the controllers at one time. I'm just going to put it in the middle, and we're going to go to the perspective view and place it roughly in front of that, and freeze transform it and give it a nice green color. So this is going to be the mouth controller, and these are going to be underneath the mouth controller. So in the hierarchy, they basically move, the mouth controller moves all of the controllers. Now I'm adding another attribute to the mouth controller, which is going to be a float. I'm going to call it happy. The minimum value is 0, maximum value is 5, and the default value is 0, and I'm going to add that to the mouth controller. So if you can see on the right now, we have a happy controller or value. I'm just going to group all the clusters just for cleanness and call it clusters. And now what I actually did is I made a small mistake, but we're going to get to that later. I'm going to select all the ghost curves, and I'm going to make a driven key, and I'm going to select the mouth controller, and that's going to be the driver, and the ghost controllers are going to be the driven. And now I'm just adding a few and just adding values that are going to be so now I'm moving the ghost cubes or controllers around, and basically the happy attribute at the mouth is going to drive this specific translations of the ghost controllers. So later on we're going to hide the yellow controllers, and the yellow controllers will drive the green controllers, and that way even if you have a shape that you are using, like for example the shape that I'm creating right now, you're still going to be able to add more, you're still going to be able to change the shape on top of the kind of like blend shape that we're creating right now. So as you can see, these yellow curves are driven by the happy attribute on the mouth curve, and you can add as many attributes to that specific mouth curve as you want. So we can make unhappy, we can make happy, we can make surprise, we can make mouth closed, we can make mouth open. But for this tutorial, I'm only going to make the mouth happy shape. And as you can see, I'm just putting a key now, and we can see that if we put 0, it's going to be like this, 1, 5. So now we have a attribute on the mouth curve that allows us to animate the mouth from 0 to 5 and then go to a happy shape. Great. Okay. So we're going to hide the clusters because we don't need to see them anymore. The animators don't need to see them. And one more important thing that I forgot to do is I made a mistake, is that we actually need to put these real curves into groups, and those groups need to be driven by the ghost controller. So what I'm doing right now is I just took all the real okay, and then I put all the ghosts curves into a group and call it ghosts, and all the real curves are going to be called real. And then I'm going to parent constrain the ghost curves on top of the real curves that are in a group. Basically that allows the ghost curves to move the group, and inside of the group so the translation doesn't go onto the controller but onto the group that is the parent of the controller, which then allows us to yeah, and that's where it went wrong, because I think I incorrectly parented one of the so I'm just going to go a few steps back, and I can see that that one went wrong. So let's see. Yeah, that's wrong there. So let's remove the parents constraints for that one. actually, let's remove it for all the last 4 groups. So I'm just selecting all the groups and deleting the parents, and then all the parent constraints, and let's just do this correctly. So parent 11 to group 11, 10 to group 10, 9 to group 9, and 8 to group 8. And now I think it's correct. So let's try by using the happy shape. Oh, yes, perfect. So the next step is to hide the ghost groups, and basically now what we have is we can use the kind of like blend shape and still animate on top. So as you can see, we can manipulate the smaller controls or the real controls, mouth controls, by the mouth controller with the happy kind of like preset, but then on top of the preset we can still manipulate the shape of the mouth if we want to make it bigger or animate it. So I'm just gonna move all of these controllers under the main control, because everything which is related to the rig should be at least under the hierarchy of the main controller. And we're gonna use we're gonna group the mouth controller, and then we're going to parent the mouth controller to the neck, and that way when we move the neck, the mouth will move accordingly. So we just put everything underneath the main controller. Yeah, it's still scalable, so that's great. So far we've rigged the body, we've rigged the arms, we've rigged the eyes, we've rigged the eyelids, and we've rigged the mouth, and we've given the mouth one specific shape. Oh, we actually didn't rig the arms yet. Funny. Okay, so the eyelids work. Okay, so let's rig the arms then now. It's fairly easy. We're just gonna parent the controllers to the joints, and that just has to be, I can repeat an action by Control G. You can't see that I'm doing it, but if you want to repeat the last action that you did, you just click Control G and we'll do it for you. So now if we select this, yay, the arms are working. And let's hide let's see, the bones. So the next step is to make the pivot controllers for the legs, for the knees. So what I just did is I duplicated one of the cubes, and I took it out of its hierarchy, and I'm going to place it right in front of the knees. So that way we have 2 new controllers which are going to allow us to manipulate the direction of the knees when we bend them. And we're going to rename them, or first free transform them so that they have 0 values. And we're gonna give them some other colors, red and blue, of course, for clarity. And then we're going to create an IK from the upper leg to the ankle. And this IK is actually not correct, but let's see what happens, because this is an SQ. Wait, let's just see. So I'm parenting the foot controllers to the IKs, and now I want to create a pole vector connection between the knee manipulator, let's say, and the IK handle, but that doesn't work because I put it to SC IK and it should be a PR IK. Don't really know why, but that's the way it is. And we're just going to do it again for the right leg, and first create the pole vector now by constraint pole vector, and that connects the little cube to the IK handle. And now we're going to connect the foot controller to the foot joint as an orient. But I have to do orient, option box, maintain offset. And we're going to do the same thing for the left right leg. And basically that allows us to rotate the foot shape now, or the foot joints. And we're going to hide the IK handles and put them underneath the hierarchy of the main curve, or the main controller. And we're going to rename this to left pivot and the other one to right pivot. And this is going to be underneath the main rig as well. And let's see what happens if we switch on the geometry. And the knees are bending. Perfect. So let's see if we can use the... Oh, it's not working. So apparently I didn't connect the controller to the IK yet. Forgot about that. So the IK is working, and I'm just connecting the... Oh, now I'm gonna Okay, so now the foot controller is controlling the IK handle, and let's do the same thing for the right foot. Perfect. And now we just need to... Okay, so we just removed the pivot controlling. So let's just assign the connection between the left pivot controller and to the IK, and the right pivot controller to the right IK, and perfect. So now we can use the foot controller to move the foot, and we can use the pivot controller to manipulate the direction of the knee. And it's still scalable, which is very important. And let's save. So I think we're almost done with this character, and let's use the happy shape. And okay, we can so the only thing now is that you can see through the mouth, so there's no actual shape that that will actually let me just show the joints again, or hide them. Yeah, so this is getting pretty far. Saving it again, and I think the next thing that I'm going to do is just try out a little bit the rig, opening the eyelids, giving it its happy shape. Yeah. So you can see that the mouth controller actually manipulates the entire all the smaller controls, and then the smaller controls are manipulating the clusters, and the clusters are manipulating the geometry. And the cool thing is that if you zero everything out, the character goes back to its original position, which is very handy. So you always have to freeze transform everything before you start rigging. And now I'm going to make the shape that is going to fill up the mouth, because I just created a cylinder with a division of 10, and I'm going to place it roughly in the middle of the mouth, and then we're going to use that shape to fill up the whole of the mouth. So I'm just going to delete some of the cylinder and center pivot it, and then we just have a flat surface left with 10 vertices that fit exactly, and we're gonna create clusters again. So we're just gonna select all the individual pivots or vertices and connect them to clusters. We could have done this earlier as well, but I just forgot about it. So this is actually a little bit more work, but it doesn't matter. So we've created all the clusters, and now we just need to connect those clusters to the other yeah, basically we're going to parent them underneath the existing ones. And now what is important is that I need to make sure that I'm yeah, putting them underneath the right ones, because as I was creating these clusters, I think that I didn't go in the right direction. So I think it's going to be, yeah. So what's wrong right now is that I've the clusters that are driving the shape inside of the mouth are not connected to the correct ones that are driving the shape of the lips. So I have to just make sure that each of them is parented under the right one. So this one is correct, and then this one is that one, so that's correct. Let's put it underneath, and then this one actually is also correct, and then this one needs to go, okay, so that one needs to go there, 12 needs to go into 4, 13 needs to go into 5, and yeah, for these clusters it's better if you do it like in order to not make mistakes, it's better to have all the names correct and all the basically do all the directions correct the first time. But yeah, if you just work it out, you manage to. And then the other thing is that there's still like a vertex in the center which is not moved by any of the clusters. So what we're going to do is we're going to just delete all of the edges, which is going to just give us one shape with one polygon, and that's going to be perfect. Okay, let's just give it a shader. Select it, add a material, and go to the main attributes editor. Oh, this is not the right shape, so let's go to the shader. What is hypershade? Yeah, that's what it's called. Okay, let's make it a little bit darker red, so it feels like it's inside of its mouth. Okay, done. And we're gonna put that one into the geometry, and we're gonna call it mouth inside. Okay, so basically our rig is done. I think we just have to hide the clusters, or actually we don't have to hide them because the group in which they are is hidden. And yeah, so the next step will be just to put all of the geometry into a display layer, and then we call it body layer, I guess, because body is already taken, the name. And then we're going to think this to R so that you can't select the geometry anymore. And this is really handy because that way you can not select the geometry when animating. And oh, that's not correct. So we have selected all the geometry, but put it in a group, but it still allows us to select the geometry. So probably we just need to select all the geometry and add it into the display layer. Yes, now we can't select the geometry anymore. That way it's easier to select the controllers, because if you constantly start selecting the geometry by accident, that's quite annoying. So yeah, we can start playing around with the character now, and because it's working. Everything is working. So he can be angry, and the funny thing is, if you have a happy shape, you also have an angry shape, because you can just rotate the entire mouth 180 degrees. Oh, he's so angry. Oh, he's angry. And let's move up the mouth a little bit, change it around, and then of course his body. I'm angry. And yeah, so we can select all the controllers, hit 0, and we're back to the original pose. Just have to change the mouth shape, but yeah, it's really nice that just by selecting all the controllers and hitting 0 on translate, just goes back to the basic pose. Now, one thing that I forgot to do is actually make controllers that manipulate the eyes, so that's what we're going to do right now. Just created a circular controller and going to place it right in front of the pupil of the eye. Let's just snap it to the middle point, and let's do the same for the left eye and move them in front and make them a bit smaller, I think. Yes, and then we're gonna have one controller that's going to control both of them. So that's gonna be the main eye controller, and the other ones are gonna be only manipulating the separate eyes. So let's shape this so it looks like a nice controller. Yeah, that's perfect. And let's give this a color. Oh no, first we're going to freeze transform all the controls and delete the history. So this is going to be our eyes controller, and this is going to be our right eye controller, and this is going to be our left eye controller. And the reason why I'm basically giving both eyes a separate controller is so that we can manipulate them individually as we want. Okay, so we're going to put those underneath the eye controller group, and now we're going to constrain the eye joint, the inner eye joint of the left eye to, we're going to make an aim constraint to the right controller. So I'm going to go to parent constraint and do aim constraint and then maintain offset. And I think I did it wrong because it needs to be the other way around. So let's select, yeah, that's not working. So we have to remove the constraints. Basically the eyes are now constraining, are now manipulating the controls instead of the controls the eyes. So we have to just select them the opposite way, and that way if we do this, yes, perfect. So just a simple eye constraint that allows us to move the pupils, perfect. And let's move this eye controller into the main control and see if it's still scalable. Yep, perfect. Now the scalability of the eye of the rig is very important, especially when you are yeah, sometimes you just have to, you come into the situation that that you accidentally modeled your scene really big and you can't scale it down anymore, so you just have to upscale the rig, and now this way yeah, the rig can be scaled. So let's make him angry again, and now we can also move the eyes, and let's make the, so now he's happy and angry, and now he's sad and angry. And yeah, like I said, you can just keep on adding more shapes to the mouth by manipulating, going back into the rig and yeah, adding new attributes to the mouth controller and then linking them up to the desired shape that you want for the mouth. Yeah, by using the ghost controllers. Look at him, he's alive. Okay, and now we select all the controllers, hit 0, and bam. Perfect. So I'm just gonna give these, the eye controller, a little bit different color. Let's make it green, and or actually make it yellow and make these purple. Okay, and let's save it. And the next step is that we're going to create a scene in which I'm going to show you my rendering techniques. So let's go to the render settings, go to V-Ray, in the V-Ray tab, go to global options and put off displacement. And then we're going to add environment override and make the color a little bit yellowish. And in the indirect illumination, we're going to put on GI. And now we're going to basically create a background. So like a photography set by cutting up a sphere into half, like an orange. And we're going to make a really big background. And we're going to scale it out and up. And then we're going to take, we're going to go to the side perspective. And we're going to select the bottom vertices and scale them down to their like a flat surface. So we have this kind of like big flat surface that that we can use as a base for our characters to stand on. And yeah, we're gonna just keep on scaling this up a bit, and then let's give it a so we have like this nice round edge, and we're gonna select and we're gonna give this a Lambert color. We're gonna just delete all the history, and we're just gonna make this background lightish yellow, light yellowish color. We're gonna remove the grid, and we're gonna create a new camera, and we're gonna call it Cam, not Can, but Cam. And then we can see the resolution gate at the V-Ray common properties, and we're gonna make it 1280 by 720, and maintains width and height ratio off. And we're gonna renderable camera, we're gonna say render cameras, and we're gonna say convert, and then test, and we're gonna hit render, and then Maya crashes. I knew that. So what I just did is I created the entire scene again, and stopped and started recording again. So we're gonna save this scene before we start rendering, and we're gonna go to tutorials, orange dude, and we're just gonna save this as render scene. Now normally I have a whole folder structure as well, but like for speed's sake, we're just gonna do it a little bit dirtier. And now what it's done, it's still giving us the Maya standard render view. So we're going to go to the common, V-Ray common, and we're going to do convert and use the V-Ray frame buffer. And that way it's going to give us the V-Ray. I'm just going to make this small and hide it, because if you close it, it's just going to reopen again every time that you render. So it's better just to make it small and hide it. So we just only have GI on right now, and we already get a nice little soft shadow and lighting scene. But what I add as well is like a directional, just a Maya directional light, and I'm going to rotate it under like a 45 by 45 degree angle. And then we're going to go into the lighting settings of the attribute editor and make it 0.6 intensity. And we're going to go to the shadows and then use ray trace shadows 3, and the shadow ray is 16. And let's see what kind of shadow that gives us. So the light angle is 3, shadow rays are 16. And just for testing sake, we let me see how it goes. Okay, so this is nice, but we can still see a kind of like an edge. So I'm just gonna give a small smooth to the background, and then just gonna move the lamp to the right, and we're going to make this a bit smaller, and then we're gonna reference our character. So we're gonna reference the dude, and the reason why I'm referencing it is because if I import it, I cannot do any changes to the rig anymore. So we'll just reference the rig, and that way when we want to change either the color or anything like that, we can just change that in the rig file, and then when we load the render scene file, it automatically updates whatever we changed. Let's just create a display layer for this background and put it to R so we can't select it anymore. And then we're going to create a V-Ray displacement group, and that allows us to keep our geometry low poly, but everything inside the group will automatically subdivide at render time. So that's our first render of our character. And if you want to know more about the V-Ray displacement group, I also have a tutorial on that where I explain it in a little bit more detail, because this was really fast. I think that we made the background a little bit too high, because we have now a drop shadow of the background itself onto itself, and that's not what we want. So let's just scale it a bit bigger and a bit down and render again. Yeah, you can see already now basically the directional light is making the background make a drop shadow on itself, and that's not what we want. Okay, so it's good. Now I don't like that the background is that white, and I also don't like that it's that light. So let's just change the GI texture down a bit, and let's make the intensity of the lamp a little bit lower to like 0.5 and try to render it again. As you can see, this light setup is really easy, really simple, and it also renders quite fast, and we still get a nice result. So let's open up let's open up the eyes, and this one too. Yeah, I just want to make sure something is off, and it was. Okay, so he has his eyes wide open, and we're gonna make him have a nice happy pose. His right arm is gonna be up, his left arm is gonna be down, and just gonna make his arm curve a little bit so it doesn't look all unnatural, and his right arm as well, and move his eyes a bit. So bend the knees and change his foot a little bit. Yeah, and then change his leg. You can see all of the rigging is paid off quite well, because it's really easy to manipulate him. And yeah, we don't have anything unnecessary done basically. So it's a really simple rig, but this kind of stuff. So let's render it again. I think that I can't see the boots almost, so let's save this, and let's change a couple of things, because I also want the eyes to have a highlight. And I'm gonna create a V-Ray material, and then I'm going to hook up the ramp texture into the diffuse color of the V-Ray material, and I'm gonna select all the objects with the original eye texture, and just gonna assign the V-Ray shader, and then I'm gonna give it a reflection color, and the amount is gonna go down, and reflection glossiness is going to go to like 77.8, so that it has like a nice strong reflection, and the reflection amount goes to like 0.6, so that way you get a really nice highlight, but you don't get like really reflective eyes. Otherwise you just get mirror eyes, and it reflects everything. So yeah, we can see that we have some nice highlights, Well, actually, they could be nicer, but it's okay like this. And we have a nice soft look. And I'm just going to save this. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the resolution to 24 by 1024 by 1024. And I'm going to select the camera and going to change the focal length to, I think, 100. And basically what that does is it makes everything really flat. And that's part of the style. Also with Lars and Rosa, the cameras are usually really far away and they are zoomed in a bit, so that for some reason you get this kind of like a little bit more flat feeling to everything. And yeah, render time is not that fast, but not that slow. And let's save this out to the tutorials folder. And when I go to Photoshop, I always save it out as an OpenEXR. And let's call this Orange Dude 01. And let's open Photoshop. Dude 1. Okay. And then we're just gonna go to image and we're gonna go to 8-bit and we're saying no, don't merge. And basically when you export an EXR, it's 32-bit and you can't manipulate it like a normal image in Photoshop. So you have to make it to either 16-bit or 8-bit. And I still am not really happy with how wide it is. So we're gonna make the lamp go to 4.5 and the background color also a bit darker. And then I'm gonna just select the background Lambert and going to make it a bit grayer, and just gonna cancel the render and render it again. Basically it's better if the colors are a little bit darker and a little bit more contrast, because if you have no contrast then it's hard to get the contrast back. But now you can see the white boots a little bit better than before. Yes, we're gonna go select the EXR and we're gonna save it over the original image. So I'm opening it again, saying update, and now I'm gonna image mode 8-bit and don't merge. And yeah, if you want to know why that is, I will also explain it in another tutorial. Just gonna create a new layer and we're gonna make the gradient on the new layer and do an overlay. And let's say opacity a little bit, and let's change it to, let's move it up a bit and just remove this gradient edge, and we're gonna put it to screen. No, overlay, a little bit less, lighten, and change it to, I don't know, purple. Okay, perfect. Anyway, the next thing that I want to do is go back into the Maya scene, and we're going to select the camera and lock all the translations, so we can just go into the perspective camera, and we're going to make another pose. This time he's going to be angry or unhappy, and just to show how quickly you can kind of like get a result with this rig. No, I have to go to the perspective view. Yes, okay. So as you can see, I made a mistake with this controller on the right in the haste of rigging, so all of them work except for the one on the bottom. And what I'm going to do is now is I'm going to open the rig, I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to fix this controller in the rigging scene. Just have to figure out which curve it is or controller. That's the one. So this one has a parent, but it's not working. So I have to select the ghost controllers, because they are controlling the clusters. Apparently the real controller is not being driven by the ghost controller, so I just have to find the right ghost controller, which is number 11, and connect it to the no, you know what, actually okay, so this one is actually not working. Okay, so I have to control the real controller, to parent it once again to the cluster. Oh, or have to be in the animation mode, and now it should be correct. Yes. So I think I just made a mistake there, but it's okay. And we just go off, hide the ghost controllers, and make this. Now it's working. Okay. Weird. Yeah, it works. Okay, let's save this and let's go back to the render scene. And now I want to change the shape of this angry mouth just a little bit, so he doesn't have his mouth open anymore. Now, normally I would make a special shape for this and just make it a blend shape, but right now I just want to do it quickly. So he's kind of like annoyed, and we're gonna translate his arms down. Just gonna zero it out. So he's gonna have his arms like he's angry. So they're gonna be on top of each other. And even though he doesn't have really long arms, it still feels kind of like he's angry. He's like, and his eyes are rolling backwards. And let's move his arm a little bit down, and his other arm as well, and his hand a little bit. And let's go back to the render cam. So he's really annoyed. Okay, and there's his eyelid. I don't want to see his eyelid, so let's move that inside and render. Okay, he's really angry. And we're gonna save this image as another EXR. And the reason why it's an EXR is if you save it to like a JPEG or a PNG and you load that into my Photoshop, you get really weird colors. So I'm just gonna do the same steps again and gonna duplicate it into the other file, and there you go. So we have two poses really quickly done, and the next thing that I want to do is I want to save this as render scene 2. Actually, I want to save this as animation 01, because as the final step in this tutorial, I'm just gonna quickly animate this character and show you how fast I can get a walk cycle going with this rig. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be an attempt. So I'm just hiding everything, and the first thing I want to do is set the playback settings to 25 FPS and set the timeline to 25 by 1 to 25 frames. And let's get animating. Okay, let's turn it a little bit around. So we're looking from it from the side. And typical walk cycle can be done in 16 frames. So yeah, let's see. We're gonna move the body down a bit, and we're gonna have the first pose of his feet, and a little bit forward or backwards. How is he walking? Okay, let's just leave it like that. And let's set a key for the hips and the feet. And then at frame 16, we're gonna have exactly the same frame. And now we're gonna just, on frame 8, we're gonna copy exactly the same pose, but then opposite. And I forgot to put a key here. So let's just, at frame 1, copy it. And then copy the, let's just go to the side view and copy it completely, and then just copy that frame to frame 8 and then 16 back to 1. Okay. So yeah, this is a really fast tutorial on animation. So if you want to get a better understanding of how I animate, or how you can animate in general, I'm gonna make another tutorial on that. But this is just to show a quick way of how the rig works. And let's see, I was forgetting to put on auto key, so I just put it on. So his right leg is in the air and his left leg is going up, and he already twists his foot out a bit, and then tuck. Let's make frame 7 is here, and he already is done. Okay, so we do the other leg. Bum. That one is good. Here he has to go rotate and back, and still back and up, and forward tuck. Okay. So let's see how that looks. Tuck, tuck. Okay. Okay, that's too fast. So let's say the playback to 25 FPS, and it's starting to look like something. We have to set the frame range to 16. Okay, this looks really weird, but it's getting there. Okay, so let's animate the body accordingly. So whenever you step forward with one leg, you kind of tend to move to the other side, and when you do the other leg, you move the opposite way. So yeah. And now I just have to copy frame 1 to frame 16 and play. Okay. Well, this looks really weird, but it's getting somewhere. Okay, let's focus on the arms. The arms are going to hang down, and we're gonna animate the floppiness a little bit. So they're gonna, oh yeah, let's open his eyes. Oh, not his body, but his eyes. And let's make him happy. Haha, he's so happy. Okay. So rotate it to have a nice, happy, closed mouth. And let's play it. I feel like his body is too far behind his legs, but I think I'm gonna change it later. So let's animate his arms. So his right leg is behind, so his left or his right arm should be in front, and that way he has like a little swing to his arm. We're gonna make it better, but just the basics. If his left leg is in the front, his left arm should be backwards. Now it's starting to look like something. And yeah, I'm gonna move his entire body a bit forward, but by doing that I have to use the graph editor that's sideways. So let's use the Z curve, and we're just gonna move it entirely to the front, so he's a little bit more in the center of his weight. I think he's still a little bit too far forward. Yes, that's better. Okay, so what I want to do next is I want to animate his body a little bit more, so he has a little bit more. To me, this is always kind of like just playing around until it feels right. And I can tell you now that at the end of this tutorial, it still doesn't really feel 100% right, because I didn't spend enough time making it look good. But hey, okay, so now we have like a twitch somewhere. That's not right. So he moves up really quick, like whoop. That's not correct. Yeah, that's there. So let's say 15. So here, at frame 3, he moves up really rapidly, and when he's moving up, he shouldn't move up so fast, because it's taking him effort. Going down could be fast, but moving up should be slow. Okay, feels a bit better. Now that feels wrong, the way he moves down. And his leg is also going weird, so I'm just gonna delete this key. And I'm gonna delete frame 7, and I'm gonna move him up a bit. Still feels really wrong. Tuck. So let's move his knee pivots forward, so they're not gonna bend the wrong way anymore. Okay, that's starting to look okay-ish. Still really primitive, but kind of okay. Well, anyway, we're gonna move onwards to the arms, and the arms are going to flap a little bit more drastically, so I'm just gonna make them move forward, and then I'm gonna do like a follow through on the hands, on the arms, so they become a bit more flappy. So as his arm is moving forward, his legs or his hand and his lower arm stay behind, and then as soon as they switch, they basically swing the other way. That way they become nice and clumsy. Yes. Great. Okay, then we do the other side. This one has to go back, and at frame 8 it has to be forward, and then frame 1 is going to be frame 16, and the loop is complete. Okay, he's gonna move forward here, so frame 4 they're gonna be behind, frame 8 they're still gonna be behind, or okay, frame 10 they're gonna be behind, 14 as well, and then at 16 they're still behind. Cool. Well, there's still kind of like a jig, like a, how you call it, a glitch in his walk, in his going up and down, so I'm gonna try to fix that, and also gonna make him sway a little bit back and forward, so and another thing that I want to do is, yeah, well, that looks better, I guess. And I want to give his body a little bit of follow through as well, so I'm just going to select the hierarchy of his, or actually I'm just going to first rotate his waist a little bit. It's not that bad. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of weight for some reason, but it's just because he doesn't really go down too much, but it's okay. It's okay for a test, just to see what the rig can do. It's just my bad animation skills at the moment, or lack of time. Could be both. Okay, so we have the reference character. We have it animated in 16 frames, and we have it in the rendering scene. So that basically allows us to, I think I'm gonna go in one more time, cutting away a few frames to see if that helps the animation get any better. I think it does. Let's cut this one too. No, oh, that's really bad. Okay, let's stay down here. Let's go down here as well, and we go up there, here as well, and we cut that frame out, and then go down here too, and we go copy the frame, and let's see, this could be up too, further up, and here we go down, further down, and here we go up slowly. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so I'm just gonna give his the rest of his body a little bit of follow through, so that when he sways a bit, so whenever his hips move to the right, his body stays behind, and I'm just gonna cut that out, and the same way going backwards. That doesn't look right. Let's remove this key, and this should be more to the right. Almost. Let's remove this key. Well, kind of looks okay. Still really weird, but it's okay for now. And we're gonna go to the cam, and we're gonna unlock all the values so that we can actually move him around the camera, and we're gonna save it, and then we're gonna make him look at the camera and walk at the same time. Awesome. Okay, so let's save the scene, and we're gonna create a file name prefix to be able to render him somewhere. We're gonna call it anim/v1/anim001 or v1, and we're gonna render to PNG animation, render animation only in batch mode. We're gonna render 1 to 16, and we're gonna render 12 by 512. Great. And we're gonna save the scene again, and we're gonna set the project, because if we don't set the project, Maya doesn't know where to render the files to. We're gonna set it to orange dude, and we're gonna try to basically now the images will be rendered out to a folder inside of that orange dude project folder, and it says we have an error, and that's because we still need to set our project. No, we have to create a project in the folder. So already in the right place, so we just need to accept, and there we go. It renders the first, no, it renders the last frame. So I'm gonna think of render animation in batch mode only, and I'm gonna just render out the scene. Okay, so all the frames are rendered. Let's open After Effects and do some final editing. Yes, okay. And go to import file, close, import file, and tutorials, orange dude, images, anyone, there we are. Select PNG selection, and then we go to interpret footage, main, color management, set this to on, okay, and let's say loop 15 times. Okay, and drag it into a composition, add a adjustment layer, and onto the adjustment layer we are going to edit a curve, and so just to bring out the brightness a bit and create a little bit of contrast, and then we're gonna pre-render. Woohoo! Oh, wait. So don't skip the frame and put the resolution to full maximum. And there's our character walking around, all rendered and well. But there's a frame double, of course, because frame 16 is double. So let's go, and we're just gonna do replace file. And then we're just gonna delete the frame 16. Yes, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. And import it again. And then we have to just trim the selection, or trim the work area. And it's still not really perfect, but that's just because I didn't spend enough time on the animation. But yeah, for 2 hours, I think this is pretty okay. And yeah, of course we can do a lot more work on the animation, getting it nicer, making it feel better, but you get an idea of what you can do with this rig. It's really simple, but yeah, that's it. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I know that at some part it went a bit too quick, but yeah, this is the first time I tried this kind of tutorial in this way, so let's see if maybe another time I can make a similar tutorial which is going to go a little bit more in depth about everything, but also I just wanted to make a an overall tutorial that just showed the entire process quite quickly, so you could just get a sense of the different steps. And like I want to make separate tutorials that explain the specific steps more in detail. So thank you for watching. If you like this tutorial, please subscribe and like it or share it, or share it to a friend that needs more help with rigging skills or animation skills or rendering skills in Maya. Thanks for watching again, and yeah, that was it. Bye bye.